felt very powerless until I've realized I have to ask the right people, the people who can make a difference. And these are the CEOs of the oil majors. So the almost 8,000 people who joined our movement now feel empowered to address the people who can make a difference. So that's what we're basically doing, empowering ordinary citizens to become a shareholder, an owner of an oil and gas major, and then force them for change.
This year, we have seen many successful cases of ESG activism, in the United States especially. And I believe that you are also, engaging to institutional investors. And some critics in Japan too, actually saying that ESG is going through sort of washing, including toxic or problematic companies in the packages. We have also seen the dark side of ESGs. But do you see the positive mindset changes in institutional investors to get on board on this sort of campaigns?
Yeah, we've seen a mindset change within institutional investors from, I call it company focus to portfolio focus. 5-6 years ago, when I started, most investors said, we're not going to vote for a climate resolution because it puts constraints on the company, the constraints of the Paris Climate Accords, the constraint of the atmosphere, actually. So we're not going to vote for constraints because constraints will limit the company's flexibility to maximize profit, and that's our responsibility. Our responsibility is to give every company maximum flexibility to maximize profit. Now, 5 years later, more and more investors say we have a responsibility that overrides this company responsibility, which is our responsibility for the world economy. And the world economy is at risk. We are stewards of the world economy as big investors. We have a portfolio in the entire economy. Climate change is a threat, so now we're going to put constraints on the companies within our portfolio that have the most influence on climate change. And let's face the facts, big oil, or let's call it fossil fuels, are responsible for more than half of the emissions. So without changing the fossil fuel industry, without making sure the fossil fuel industry becomes a renewable energy industry, there's no chance to meet the Paris Accord. So that's the change I've seen within investors. They now, one by one, say, okay, Chevron might tell us that it's better for their company not to have targets, but we think for our entire portfolio, it's important that Chevron has targets, and therefore they vote for these kind of climate resolutions.
Great, thank you. I'd like to move on to about the follow this, because and Japanese people, I believe that Japanese people would have a lot of things to learn from you. Just out of curiosity, could you tell me how you found it, follow this, sort of the stories of the, how you started up?
Yeah, I started by calling investors and pension funds with the idea that they should drive the change within the oil industry. And they all thought it was a very sympathetic initiative, but they said to me, we do engagement, we talk with them behind closed doors. That's the best way to get them moving. And then when I asked, what are the results? They say, that's confidential. So in 2014, 2015, I concluded that the only way to get this off the ground was by a grassroots organization. So I opened a website where everybody who believed in this cause could buy one symbolic share in Shell, 30 euros, send an email to the CEO of Shell saying, hi Ben, I'm your newest shareholder. You can change the world, you have my support, therefore I'm your shareholder. And I could go to the shareholder meeting and talk about on behalf of a few hundred shareholders. That was 2015. Then 2016, we had enough capital, 5 million euros, to file a shareholder resolution. And that was the moment when it got serious, because then we made crystal clear that by asking, please commit to the Paris Climate Accord, shift your investments from fossil fuels to renewables, by asking that, putting that on the agenda, crystal clear, of the shareholder meeting, the company said, no, we're not going to do that. And we advised shareholders to vote against it. and then a few shareholders voted for. So it was very visible what shareholders wanted. And that's basically what we did. We made it evidently visible that shareholders want change. And this started very small, 2.7%. Now we're at 30% in Europe and even at the majority in the US. So it's now evidently clear that shareholders want change. But this transparency was apparently needed to get these oil majors moving, because until that time, before there were shareholder resolutions on the ballot, they could easily say, yes, we talk to our shareholders and they think we have a great strategy.
Great, thank you. What I found interesting the most was your the campaign that become a green shareholder on your webpage, and it says that you can be your campaign. If you're the shareholder of the the major oil companies, you can join yours, and if you're not, you can buy shares alongside with you. And I think that would be fantastic, especially because Generation Z, especially in Japan, are watching what Greta Thunberg are saying, and they are most aware, in terms of the climate crisis. Could you tell me how Japanese retail investors, for example, can join your initiative?
Yeah, basically everybody can join our initiative. Retail investors who already have shares in big oil companies can just register on our website and saying how many shares they have. So we can add that to the number of shares we have behind us. People who don't have shares, they can just buy one symbolic share in Shell, BP, Chevron, you name it, and rightfully call themselves a green shareholder in big oil. Sounds very counterintuitive, but we think it's a crucial part of stopping climate change, fighting the climate crisis. And you're right, that is for the new generation, very empowering, because like everybody, I also felt very powerless towards climate change. Of course, I have solar panels on our roof. I take the train within Europe. I don't eat meat, but that's all I can do myself. And it will not make any difference on this global issue. So I also felt very powerless until I've realized I have to ask the right people, the people who can make a difference. And these are the CEOs of the oil majors. So the almost 8,000 people who joined our movement now feel empowered to address the people who can make a difference. So that's what we're basically doing, empowering ordinary citizens to become a shareholder, an owner of an oil and gas major, and then force them for change.
Great. We have discussed in ESG in Japan, but most of people in corporate world think that, especially in energy industry, tend to think that, the Paris Agreement is very important, but there's always but, that it's too urgent to, too urgent, and we can't, get on because we have to also, secure the profits. What are the, sort of strategies that you always take to talk to companies, saying like this, negative, things?
Yeah, the oil industry has done an excellent job in convincing investors that they need their dividends, that they need their profits to pay the pensions, and that they need big oil, and that it is a kind of law of nature that they need big oil shares, and that big oil cannot change. But that's over now. More and more pension funds realize that not only their entire portfolio is at risk, but also these companies. And telling the world that we can't do without oil and gas is really a fallacy. Let's face it, solar panels, wind turbines, tidal generation, geothermal, all these renewable technologies are getting cheaper and cheaper, and getting oil and gas and coal out of the ground is getting more expensive and will also be taxed more heavily. So you have a very old-fashioned raw materials-based energy supply, and you can move to a technology-based energy supply. The sun delivers enough energy within an hour to power the world economy for a year. The only issue is to transfer the solar power into usable power, like electricity or heat, or maybe hydrogen, and have it ready at the right time. That's the big issue, of course. At moments that the sun doesn't shine and the wind doesn't blow, we also need energy. So that's the big issue, but we have batteries, we have hydrogen. So it's all technology. I'm an engineer, so I have a big belief that engineers will solve these problems. So the technology is there. The only thing is, what are the business models? And this is always the issue when incumbents have to change. Of course, they see the technology, but they don't imagine new business models. I always use Kodak as the big example. Kodak invented digital photography. So they mastered the technology, only they didn't dare to look for new business models because they thought they had a brilliant business model selling photo films and photo paper with high margins. So they told their people, okay, nice that there's digital photography, but we only started when we are absolutely sure that there's a business model which can replace our current business model. That's not going to happen. You have to try different business models. And to go to the oil industry, now the oil industry is drilling for oil in many different places. Sometimes they hit a big resource, sometimes they find nothing and they lose billions. So instead of exploring oil and gas, which is not needed anymore, they should explore new business models.